Hello, everyone. You've tuned into the Indiana State Police Roadshow, brought to you by the Indiana State Police Alliance, Cops for Kids, subsidiary of the Indiana State Police Alliance. Thank you very much for joining us today. I want to thank Tom Trial for being with us and putting us on YouTube each and every week. Tom's got a lot of interesting films on the YouTube site from days back of state police that he's taken off reel to reel and put on there. So it's a good place to go to watch some informational videos and up-to-date videos. And thank you, Tom, for what you do. And I appreciate Tom's waving at me from behind the camera. With me today is an old friend, good guy, public information officer for INDOT, Nathan Riggs. Thanks for being here, Nathan.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you coming in here. It's kind of our show that we do this time of the year every year. We kind of get fired up for what's going to be coming, unfortunately, here in the next few months. We talk to you about you guys, what you're getting done, and your winter operations that's going to be happening at INDOT.
Well, hopefully not, but we're ready.
Exactly. Yeah, we're hoping that it's going to slide by. Have you heard any forecast, official forecast?
Yeah, actually, the National Weather Service here in Indianapolis, they do a seasonal climate outlook.
Okay.
And so that's always interesting to see what they look at traditional, the data over the years and what
trends,
what the current systems are looking like, and how it matches up with previous years, La Nina. And they're predicting a light to moderate La Nina pattern. In addition to many other complicated things, I'm not a meteorologist, but it's panning out to look a lot like perhaps last year, where it might be a little bit milder, but yet they are predicting more snow. We didn't get much snow here in Indianapolis at all last year. It was less than a foot, 10 inches maybe, for the entire season. Yeah. And that's over a foot under average. So they're predicting about an average snowfall winter, which after the last couple of years being really mild, average will probably feel like the snowpocalypse. Yeah. So it's good to just make sure everybody is thinking that we are getting into the winter season. This cold weather, this cold snap that we've had, hopefully is getting people ready for the season and starting to think about things like leaving a little bit early for work and slowing things down when there could be snow and ice on the roads.
Absolutely. And I know we've talked about this before when we've had you guys on there. Your guys you prepare for this quite a bit in advance, and you do it all year long. Of course, you have to have the salt and the sand and the brine ready to go. And luckily, probably didn't use a lot of that last year, so maybe you have a little bit in reserve?
Yeah, the salt is actually a preservative, so it has a shelf life. All the salt that we didn't use last year that stayed in the barns, that's still good this year, so we can reuse it. And so, we plan all year long from, maybe March when we had the last winter weather event. We start calculating, looking at our barns and saying, what do we need to order for next year? We start looking at our numbers as far as personnel, trucks. What do we need to do over the next, 6 or 8 months to get back ready for the next season? Because, thank the Earth's axis, we have seasons. We're not living in the tropics. We can predict that we're going to have another winter coming up in a few months. So we want to make sure that we're ready and we have the right resources in place.
Now, when you guys start this, I know a lot of times you have a snow plow training. Did you do that again this year, or will that be coming up where you folks work with your snow plow or your new drivers and things and get them ready and prepared for their routes?
Yes, it's the new drivers. Of course, we want to make sure that they're ready for something that they've never done before.
Exactly.
But also our veteran drivers. It's something that they do, but there's always new safety techniques, new technology. Just a refresher course for some. Sometimes they're on a new route and they want to become familiar with that route. So there's a snow school that we have every year that involves safety, just going through the protocol, just making sure everybody's on the right page, on the same page. We have coordination between each of our districts, sub-districts, unit levels. So we've got resources spaced all throughout the state of Indiana, and they're responsible for different routes. So there's internal communication and there's external communication. So there's a lot that goes into it, trying to get everybody ready for that first snowfall.
And part of that is, and we've talked about this before on your plows. You guys got some new ones. Not so much new anymore because we've talked about it for 3 years, but you've utilized them up north. They're coming south. You had some on 465. That was the trail plows. Is that what am I calling that right?
Tow plows.
Tow plows.
Right.
Tow plows. Yeah.
So it's basically a trailer with a plow on it, and it's towed behind a tandem axle dump truck. This allows one driver to clear 2 lanes at the same time, or possibly a right lane and a shoulder, something like that. Just allows us to cover more ground with with the same amount of resources. So it's just more efficient. We've had those around for a few years now.
Right, yeah.
We've grown them in numbers, so you can expect to see those on multi-lane divided highways, some interstates, some U.S. highways. In the Indianapolis area, you might see them on 465 or I-65 or I-70. We've had them running on US 31, which is not an interstate, but it's a divided highway, much like an interstate.
Yeah.
And so we can cover both lanes at the same time. Now, I'll go a step further and say that if both lanes are being covered by this tow plow, that leaves no lanes for passing. However, we have had vehicles.
I was going to say, the reason you have to say that is
I
because.
have to say this because it's happened.
Yeah.
This is the legal advisory. Do not attempt to pass a tow plow that's being deployed, because there's often not a lane for you to drive in. It's not safe to pass in the median, and it's not safe to pass on the shoulder. Yeah. And that's really true of most snow plows. You probably don't want to pass a snow plow because they're clearing the ice and the snow off the road in front of you.
Right.
You can always expect the conditions to be better behind a plow. I know that everybody's in a hurry and everybody has somewhere to go, but that snowplow driver is doing their job, and their job is to make the road as safe as possible for you. So give them all the room that you can. Please be patient, plan ahead, and those things can really help out trying to get everybody to where they need to go safely.
Yeah, and we were talking before we came on the air here about the winter weather and what to expect and how people drive around these vehicles. And there's some good safety things that you have in a pamphlet here that you've given me to be prepared and what to do. And I think the best one is the knowledge. Know before you leave what you're going to be involved with. Right.
Planning ahead. That there's that saying that proper planning prevents poor performance. We say that in construction all the time. Our contractors use that. And that's true of driving, especially in inclement weather. Knowing what the weather conditions and the road conditions are before you're leaving. And that starts with just knowing the weather forecast. So you know what the probability is of meeting snow, before you leave in the morning, watching the weather and knowing what the afternoon forecast is going to look like, so that you can plan properly. If you're in a hurry to be somewhere on time, you're more likely to make rash decisions, and rash decisions are more likely to be bad decisions. So that choice to make a sudden lane change or pass somebody, maybe not using your turn signal, those are things that those are preventable crashes. Those types of rash behaviors often lead to crashes, and it's entirely preventable. And making sure that your vehicle is even able to drive in those type of conditions. If you've got bald tires, you have no business driving on the interstate, especially during winter weather. Now's the time to be looking at those things. If you're not a mechanic, if you're not mechanically inclined, it's worth the minimal investment to have your vehicle checked out now to prevent something that could potentially turn into a tragedy.
Yeah, and you were talking about the vehicles being prepared, and one of those biggest things is, and even now this time of year when it started raining, is that windshield wipers. And a lot of times folks don't remember those until it is raining, and they turn them on and they get that streak across there when they go, or even worse. So something to look onto before to start the winter weather here. They've sit in the sun all summer and dried out. So make sure you inspect those those windshield washers. Make sure your washer fluid is filled, ready to go.
Right. Make sure you've got the all season or the winter mix.
Yeah.
So that if we get down there, near zero, that summer mix that's only good to about 20 above is not freezing on your windshield. That can be a shock to the system if you're driving down the highway.
Yeah, and when you run across this salt and abrasive materials that you folks put on there, and you need your windshield cleared off, you want to have that so it's going to be able to clear it off easily and get it off of your vehicle. Well, again, you've listened to the Indiana State Police Roadshow, brought to you by the Indiana State Police Alliance. I'm with Nathan Riggs. We're talking about winter driving and INDOT's preparedness here for the winter season coming up here very, very shortly, unfortunately. And we're talking about what INDOT's doing to get ready for this. Let's talk a little bit about preventative stuff that you guys do in the way of the brine. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that a little bit? Again, maybe newer drivers out there haven't seen that, know what's going on with that, and how that works on your highways.
Yeah, so we've got big tanker trucks that haul. It's a saltwater solution, about 23% salt water, and we will spray that on the roadways, and that can act as a preventative barrier for frosts that come in during the overnight hours that otherwise might glaze over, especially bridges, elevated areas like ramps. It'll keep that from freezing up. It'll also act as that kind of first defense against any snowfall, any mist, freezing rain, anything like that. It can give us just a head start because it takes time to, especially for things that are low probability. Right? We're looking at a 20% chance of a trace of freezing rain. It can really act as a good prevention against those types of things. When we do have to call our trucks in, because we don't just have troops ready to go all the time. Yeah. It costs money to have people working, right? Mm-hmm. And where they're needed, we'll call them in. We'll do what we need to do to have those resources in place. But sometimes things pop up that were a little bit unexpected, and it takes time to deploy those resources. Yeah. So while that first snow is coming down, sometimes we're loading up the trucks and we're getting them out. It could take 2 to 3 hours for that truck to run a complete route. So while that brine is on the pavement, it's still working for us until we can get some of that granular salt out there. And the tankers spray the brine on the roadway or sometimes just on the bridges, depending on what the forecasts look like. That water evaporates, but the salt residue stays on the pavement. And so that starts either dissolving the snow that's coming down or keeping the frost from freezing on the pavement. And that's what it's all about, is just keeping the ice from bonding with the pavement. We're not trying to melt everything that's coming out of the sky. If we're getting a 6-inch snow, we're not going to try to melt it all. That's going to use a lot of salt. We want to try to keep it loose, keep the ice from bonding with the pavement so that we can clean it up faster once everything's done.
And I know people might recognize this when they go along and they see those lines on the highway and maybe wonder what that is, but that's actually what the brine looks like. It's just looks like maybe something 6 or 8 lines across the interstate highway, and that's what keeps that from adhesive towards the do you use that all just interstates, or is that also state roads, or how does that work out?
Mostly on the high traffic volume highways. First, we're targeting the bridges because those are those freeze up first. They're elevated, and often when the temperature drops below zero, especially or below freezing, I should say, Celsius.
Definitely below zero.
Right. So we get below freezing during the overnight hours. The ground usually stays warmer, especially the road. There's a radiant heat there that keeps it warmer. But the bridges, the elevated ramps, those are up above, and those will freeze up first. Right. And so sometimes we'll go out and brine the bridges, but not brine the mainline interstate. It really just depends on what the forecasts look like. But the entire purpose is to try to prevent ice from forming on the pavement and give people a safeguard against slick spots.
Now, if people wanted to look at something, the road conditions around the central Indiana, find out what's happening across Indiana with the weather conditions and what you guys are doing, is there a place they can go to on social media to find that out?
Well, you can follow us. Each of the INDOT districts has a social media pages: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you go to the INDOT website, you'll be able to kind of navigate your way to find all these resources. We've also got a winter operations page that has resources like traffic cameras, roadway conditions, maps, interactive maps that people can find the information that they need before they leave, know what the conditions look like, both weather and roadway conditions, and make fair judgments on what they need to do and how much time they need, things like that.
Yeah, that's excellent excellent information that they need to look forward to, and instead of calling your local law enforcement or state police post and saying, hey, what's the weather out there? Go to this website. Indiana State Police has got a link to it also that you can look at for road and weather conditions. And that's the best way to find out what's going on in your area instead of calling us or you guys who are going to be very busy at that time. INDOT.carsprogram.org is the one site to go to look for roadway conditions. But we've also got a winter operations page that has driving safety tips. I think that has a lot of the same information that the state police page has. There's a lot of information that people can get for safe winter weather driving, and I would recommend that they go there and check it out. Great. Well, Nathan, thank you for coming in. Unfortunately, we've had to have this conversation every year, and we're going to have it again this year. So keep our fingers crossed. Maybe we won't get a lot of snow.
Thank you.
Again, we've been talking with Nathan Riggs, Public Information Officer for the INDOT, and we're talking about winter driving weather. Be safe out there. Make sure that you get this prepared before the snow and ice hit. We'll talk to you again next week. Roadshow out.